Generally speaking, for the front end of your business, you're better off in big countries. You're just going to have less hassle. Banking, payment processing, all that stuff. The US, UK, some EU, depending on the tax structure in that jurisdiction, you're better off like that. Welcome. This is a lovely tax talk. This is crazy. It looks like we have like 32 people showing up to talk about the sexiest topic on earth, taxes, of course. A couple of you that were here earlier, I told a few of you, I created just a WhatsApp group for anybody after this that wants to ask questions and stuff. However, I can only give you that WhatsApp group when I take my phone down, or somebody that signed in can give it to you. But if you're interested, ask me after when I finish the recording with my phone, and I can give you the QR code to join the WhatsApp. So you can, I'll probably keep that group open at least a week after the crew is finished, so you can stay in there and ask questions. So a little background, I'm an international tax lawyer. I've been doing this for about 20-something years, and my area of expertise is not helping people optimize in their home country. It is location independent, mainly entrepreneurs and investors who have exited their home country, who do not live in their home country. Predominantly you guys, but I know, how many of you still live, like have home base predominantly, and you have like your tax residency in your home country? Do you spend most of your time in your home country and you just travel and go on vacations?
No.
50-50? Yes? 50-50? Anyone else?
70 out,
70 out, 30 in? Okay. Where are you from? Germany.
I say less.
Super easy, by the way, for Germans to exit the tax system. It's like one of the easiest countries to exit. And if you're there 30% of the time, it's crazy for you to keep paying taxes in Germany. It's nuts. Who's German? My God, you guys invade boats too. In Germany? I mean, you're less than half. Let me give a disclaimer here. I'm not an encyclopedia. When I do consultations, I have my resources in front of me. I can pull up, you tell me you're from Germany, I pull up my resource for tax residency in Germany. And I consult with clients all over the world, so there's no possible way my brain can maintain all of that like an encyclopedia. If you ask me questions, I may not have the answer here, but if we're on a consultation call, I will open all my resource materials up for you on my screen so you would have better resources or better responses. With Germany, the main thing is you have to deregister with your municipality. Basically, you tell them you no longer live in Germany and where you moved to. They don't check it, they don't confirm it. You can tell them you moved to the moon, they don't care. You just have to tell them you no longer live in Germany. Once you've exited, you've deregistered from your local municipality, then you are no longer a tax resident, and then you do have to stay out of the country more than half the year. And that's basically it. If you have a business registered in Germany, it is significantly more of a pain in the ass because deregistering a business, closing a business in Germany, on average takes a year. So you will have let's say a 1 to 2 year transition period if you're German with a German company, because you'll need a new business structure and you'll have to like transition to the new structure and then go through this long, arduous, closing down process for those of you that are Germans.
You register and get out of the country at the same time as that possible?
I mean, it's a much better idea for you to get rid of the German company. There are better options for Europe. What are you selling? Physical products? Yeah. So I'm going to discuss company structure on Thursday, but basically, if you're selling into the European Union, then it's ideal if you have an EU registered company and VAT registered. However, if you're not living in Europe but selling in Europe, then probably in Estonia. Estonia. Yeah, but no company tax. No company tax in Estonia. Probably a better idea to have an Estonian company in that case. Now, to be fair, in your situation, it's not like all of this is an easy thing to do, right? You're going to have to jump through some hoops and make some changes in your lifestyle and the way you conduct business and operate. You will have to, it's going to cost you some money to register a new company. You're going to have to transition. If you have contracts, you've got to change all your contracts over to a new company, new banking, new payment processing. Right? I mean, it can be messy, but it depends on the scale. If you're taxed, if you only pay 10,000 euros in tax, why would you bother? It's not worth it. You pay 2 million euros in tax, it's significantly more interesting, right? If you can save a massive amount in tax. A couple of more of my disclaimers, always the fun ones. If you are living outside of your home country, get really comfortable with the gray area. I saw the Germans. Who are the Canadians in the room? It's always the Germans and the Canadians that hate gray area shit. It's every single time I get on a consultation call with either Germans or Canadians, it absolutely breaks their brain to think that you cannot get a black and white answer on something. Are you Canadian?
No German.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm absolutely right. I've been doing this for a long time. I get always Polish people or Serbians or Mexicans that are like, fuck, I'm doing that anyway. They're already doing that. That's their whole their whole life is in the gray area.
The MO.
But, huh?
The MO.
Yeah, that's their MO, right? But Germans and Canadians, it has to fit in this pocket or this pocket, or it doesn't go anywhere else.
But the reason is because the enforcement is a little bit better than in Mexico or Serbia. I
Maybe.
don't know about Canada, but in Germany, definitely law enforcement is a little bit better.
I would say the brainwashing is also much more thorough. Germany and Canada. It's much more thorough because you're conditioned from the beginning to believe this is what you're supposed to do. In Mexico or Serbia or whatever, there's not that conditioning.
That's true.
You have to follow the rules, right? Anyway, you have to get comfortable with gray area stuff. It's just a reality. If you take white being 0, black being 10, the idea is get somewhere between 1 and 4 on your gray scale. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of gray area things. One example, who's been to Thailand? Who's traveled to Thailand? Tons of you, right? I assume, did any of you work when you were in Thailand? Check email, upload a video, check your inventory, client calls, anything. Any of you do that? I assume all of you, of course, got a working visa and filed your tax return when you were there for that period of time, right? None of you? Okay, so that's gray area because under Thai tax law, literally, you send one email. Technically, you send one email from your hotel as work. They don't. In Europe, it's not. In Europe, it's not considered work because you're not taking like a local job, working in a local company or something like that. In Thailand, anything professionally related that you do physically in the country is considered work. If you've ever done that, you've lived in the gray area. You may not know you were living in the gray area, but you were definitely in that gray zone. It's just a reality. Another example, anybody live in Portugal? There must be a few of you. My God. Really? Only a couple of you. No, do you guys have NHR?
I have, but I'm not living there.
Not living there. Okay, you got it, but now you've exited.
Yeah.
I was considering doing it, but it's like so confusing how it actually works. So just go back.
It's very confusing. I think Portugal does a really. It depends on how you're trying to optimize. In Portugal, if you want to optimize for tax, you need to do NHR, right? And then ideally, what you want is to get paid a dividend from a company in a country that has a tax treaty with Portugal. That's like the golden ticket there, right? You want to get dividends from the company.
Otherwise, it's a mess.
Otherwise, it's a
Without
disaster.
NHR, don't think about it.
Yeah, without NHR, it's a mess. That's the one kind of golden ticket. The problem is you need to have a company that pays you a dividend registered in a country that has a tax treaty with Portugal. You can't get a dividend from a zero, like an offshore company in Panama or Belize or Cook Islands or something like that, because there's no tax treaty. And then the income from there is not treated as a dividend, it's treated as ordinary income. And then you pay, I think it's 56% tax in Portugal. What a lot of people do with Portugal is they register LLCs in the US, which is a pass-through. The problem is this ends up in a conflict of laws situation between Portugal and the US, because in the US an LLC is a pass-through. It does not pay dividends. An LLC pays a profit distribution to the members or the owners. Does not pay dividends. But people are doing this in Portugal under NHR, registering LLCs and claiming it as a dividend on the Portuguese side. But from the US side, it can't be considered a dividend because it doesn't exist. On the Portuguese side, there's no such entity or similar entity as an LLC. They don't have that type structure, so they don't understand what an LLC is. And a lot of accountants, that if you have an accountant in Portugal, they just claim it as a dividend, and the accountant says, it's a dividend, and that's what they claim it, and the Portuguese tax office in many cases, most cases accept it. So anyway, it's just an example of a conflict of law situation between two countries that can create some issue. And in that scenario, you have to decide. If you were in Portugal with NHR and you have a Wyoming LLC, you have to decide. It is a gray area thing to do, but do you consider the risk there to be lower risk? Do you consider that to be a 2 or a 3 on the gray scale? If so, and you're comfortable with that, go for it. If not, then you would need to register a...
I guess a high level one, which other people may have experienced, like, is it actually possible to not end up as a tax resident anywhere?
That is a great question.
I'm under 180 in the US, I'm under 120 in the UK, like 190 in Europe, like, is that even possible? If so, like...
That's an excellent question, and it actually reminded me of two disclaimers. So the first one, who here has read somewhere, a blog, Facebook group, whatever, about the 183-day tax rule? Okay? All right, so that's complete bullshit. That is complete nonsense. Every country has very specific rules on what it means to be a tax resident in that country. Almost no country has a blanket 183-day tax rule. Almost none. Like Spain, for example, has a 183-day tax rule. But if you own a home in Spain and that is considered your primary residence, let's say you live there 3 months a year and then you travel and come back, Spain would still consider you a tax resident even if you're not there.
Germany.
Yeah. So there's so many little nuances to this rule. You can't just throw a blanket over and say, it's 183 days. I don't have to be, if I'm not there 183 days, I'm not a tax resident. Some countries have completely different rules on it. So Mexico has completely different rules. They have nothing even remotely similar to 183-day tax rule. Let me finish answering that, and you get to go next. To answer your first question, so that was one of my disclaimers, is the 183-day tax rule. I swear to God, somebody wrote a blog like 12 years ago, and everybody references back to that one blog for 183-day tax rule, and somehow it became like the digital nomad golden rule or something. It's complete nonsense. There are very detailed nuances for each country.
I guess the question should have been more like, if you're not deemed a tax resident by any jurisdiction individually, does that mean you're not a tax resident?
So yes, you can be. It depends on your nationality. So it depends on your nationality. Countries, it's very easy to exit the tax system, and it is very easy to live nomadically without actually having tax residency anywhere. It is very possible depending on your nationality. Americans, how many Americans we got? A few.
You're lost.
So yeah, we're fucked. Sorry, we're fucked. All Americans are citizenship-based taxation, so you are always a tax resident in the U.S., even if you never, ever in your entire life go back to the U.S. Okay? That's called accidental Americans, right? There's a whole term for that called accidental Americans. There's a lot of that, like diplomats, or like let's say British diplomats have a kid and then move back to the UK after a month after the baby's born, and they have no idea that it's American citizens, but they are. Actually, who was the politician in the UK? It was a few years ago. I can't remember his name. He's a high-profile politician in the UK. But that was his situation. His parents were on a diplomatic mission when he was born in the US, and he was only there a couple of months.
But you need to claim the residency or the passport. You don't claim it. You don't.
No, you're still a citizen if you're born in the US. If you're born in a US hospital, your birth certificate is recorded in the US. If you never claim a passport,
over America, because they don't take pregnant women on a plane over America because they're frightened that they
yeah,
American children.
yeah. Oftentimes, yeah, that's true. If you're like 8 months pregnant. If you're a woman, 8 months pregnant, flying to the U.S., they won't let you board the plane. They're afraid you're going to stay and make the baby in the U.S. And that's a real thing. That's serious. But yeah, you don't have to have a passport to be considered a U.S. citizen. You're just physically born. But anyway, there was a UK. I wish I could remember which one it was. Boris Johnson. He was born in the U.S. He's an accidental American. And just a few years ago, he ended up getting a tax bill in the U.S. for selling a property. And he's, what, 70-something years old. He never filed a tax return his whole life in the U.S. And he gets a tax bill in the U.S. for a capital gains tax for selling his house. And he's like...
What did the U.S. government know about it?
How did they know? Somebody...
He's normally famous. So.
He's famous, yeah, he's high profile. But there's somebody at the tax office in the IRS who found out somehow or another and made it his personal mission to send Boris Johnson a tax bill.
Yeah, but also like when you bank abroad, banks are, there's an agreement called FATCA, and they have to report American citizens and residents if they're banking outside of America. So he had like an American passport, although
Boris Johnson didn't have an American passport.
So yeah.
He was born in the U.S. and when his parents were on diplomatic mission, he was only a couple of months old when he left. He was never a U.S. passport.
How did you get
Did you have an answer to his question though? The one
Yeah, so can you be not tax resident? This is actually one of my all-time favorite questions. The answer is, in most cases, yes. And that is something that is so controversial and people it blows their minds. No fucking way. I can't be, I have to pay tax somewhere. I'm supposed to, right? Canadians, Germans, am I right? Am I right? Polish? Nah, Polish are like, are you kidding? This is a fucking hobby for me.
But it can be an advantage to have businesses somewhere.
Depends on your situation.
In Germany, when you come back, it's definitely better when you have some checks where you say you have paid your taxes somewhere. It's an advantage. I don't say it will be a mess, but it's an advantage.
It depends on your situation. There are pros and cons. There's trade-offs to all of it. So if you do not have tax residency anywhere, it's going to be hard for you to get like a traditional mortgage with a bank. That doesn't mean you can't get a mortgage. It means you're not going to be able to go to a big bank and get a traditional mortgage.
But can you get a bank account? A bank account?
Huh?
A bank account?
No problem with bank accounts.
How do you do the KYC?
Huh?
How do you do KYC?
Based on your physical residency. You need to have physical residency somewhere. Because you're not going to be, you're not going to.
So you say, just take an address, take the bill,
No.
do the KYC.
Physical residency. Like you need to go apply and immigrate to a country and become a physical resident. So there's a very clear difference between physical residency and tax residency. They're not the same thing. Sometimes they intersect, but not always. It depends on the country. But physical residency is governed by the migration office of that country. You have a certain set of criteria to meet. Every country is different. Some countries you buy property there, you get a job there, you get married there, whatever. That gives you rights of residency in that country. For example, in the European Union, if you marry a local citizen, you automatically have rights of residency through family unification visa. Automatically. But that doesn't make you a tax resident in that country unless you also fulfill the tax office's requirements for you to qualify as a tax resident. And there are different things you have to do there. So, like I said, I can't get into all the detail because it's very specific to each country and there's nuances to each one.
But on a high level, what would be like the 3 best countries where you can get physical residency without having to become a tax resident?
I think Mexico is a really good option.
Ideas for blogs.
Huh?
Question. Ideas
Yep.
for blog
In
partners.
the UK, it's possible. You just have to stay, visit, stay in the country.
But if you're a UK citizen, yes. But as a non-UK citizen to become a resident in the UK, you would depends on your visa status. Again, if I marry a UK citizen, then it would be easy. I marry a UK citizen, get residency under family unification.
It's maybe too much to get an address.
Yeah. No,
To marry for an address.
yeah, that's a bit extreme for an address. But I'm not talking about just an address. I'm talking about actually having a residence card. That you're actually registered as a resident in that country. You're a bona fide resident of that country. But Mexico's a good option for that. Paraguay used to be really good. Paraguay's not so great anymore, but it's still a viable option. It's just not as nice and easy and cool as it was like a couple of years ago.
Why is that?
What's that?
Sorry, why is Paraguay not as fun?
Well, it still was really easy to go to Paraguay. You get permanent residency just by making a deposit in the bank, and your card's good for 10 years, and great. Show up every couple of years just to get your passport swiped, and that's it. Super easy. Now you can't get permanent residency from the start. You can only get temporary residency, good for 2 years. And then, in theory, we don't really know yet because this is pretty new. In theory, though, you're going to need to have some connection to Paraguay for them to let you turn that into permanent residency. Okay? But this has happened less than 2 years ago. They changed the rules. We don't really know because there's nobody who's gone back yet to renew their 2-year temporary residence visa, because it's, I guess we're coming up on 2 years right now. Maybe somebody's done it right now, but we're like, right now is the time that the people under the new program 2 years ago got the 2-year temp residence. We don't exactly know. They might say, it might be as simple as, hey, I want to renew my residency for permanent residency. Okay, stamp, here you go. Or they might say, hey, we need to see your last 2 years of bank statements. We need to see a lease agreement where you've lived here for the past 2 years and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more. It's still a viable solution because Paraguay is what I call a tier 2 country, a residency-based territorial tax system. That makes it great because if you have residency in Paraguay, you're not really going to be a tax resident anyway, but they don't tax you on anything earned outside of the territory anyway. Right? The only thing you have to do is you have to go back every couple of years, just say hello and get your passport swiped. Costa Rica, by the way, is another option there.
Yeah.
Costa Rica also is a residency-based territorial tax system. It's just a bit harder. It's just a bit harder to get residency in Costa Rica.
Indeed, I have a residence in Costa Rica and a company there and an LLC in the US, and I'm now, after playing the game of having as many passports as I can possibly can. I don't know why. I guess it's now a hobby more than anything. But
so the tricky thing with that setup that you have, residency in Costa Rica with a U.S. LLC, is technically that LLC, the income from it, if you earn $100,000, that's considered your personal income from the U.S. side. And in Costa Rica, you would be taxed on that money from the U.S. LLC.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So, okay.
100%.
Sorry, hold on. I need to hear that again.
So,
no, because I have a company in Costa Rica. It's not that I'm a resident in Costa Rica and then I only have.
And I'm not saying you're not getting away with it. I'm just telling you the legality of it.
Yeah, I want to really understand more. I thought I knew a lot, but maybe
the
no
hack
more
for
than
that is,
yeah.
All my clients that go to Costa Rica, we do almost the same thing, but we register like a Wyoming LLC. And then we register an offshore holding company that owns the Wyoming LLC, and then you pay yourself a dividend from the holding company.
Exactly.
Because then the holding company can legally retain earnings, and then you just dividend yourself. And from the Costa Rican side, then it's a dividend from a source outside of Costa Rica. But the problem with an LLC only in Costa Rica, it's pass-through, and it's treated as personal income to you. And if you're a resident in Costa Rica, personal income is taxable.
But I don't have any personal income because all the income I get goes through my company in Costa Rica and my company in the US.
Right, and the company and the income that comes to the company in the US is personal income.
Is it?
Yes, 100%.
For Costa Rica, yes.
100%.
So what I'm doing is, sorry, I don't want to monopolize.
So what you're doing is more like on the.
Yeah, I'm like half Serbian, half I'm Spanish but I guess
That's okay.
I'm the same tier.
Yeah, you're like the Serbia of Southern Europe.
Right, exactly. but sorry, this is very interesting because
But for you, it's simple. Create an offshore holding company, restructure the LLC, and that's it. It's not that big of a deal. It'll cost you some money to set it up, but then you clarify that whole situation for you. That's easy.
Let's say I didn't have the residency in Costa Rica or the company in Costa Rica. I guess I can have my money coming into my LLC in the US and then paying myself, as long as I'm not a resident in any country, that I can pay myself the money from my LLC with no problems, right?
I would keep the residency in Costa Rica because it's an excellent option.
That's what took me 3
I would
years to
keep
figure
it
that out.
and create the offshore holding company and restructure the LLC So then you clarify that whole, that's the only thing you need to do to fix what you've got. That takes you from an 8 to a 2 on the grayscale. Actually, really, it takes you all the way to a 0, because that's black and white in Costa Rica.
So you said that Costa Rica is a territorial tax.
Yeah.
So it means that if I don't make the money in Costa Rica, the same Costa Rican passport, I don't have to pay tax.
Are you a Costa Rican resident?
No.
You're a Costa Rican citizen, but you're not a resident. Then you wouldn't pay tax in Costa Rica anyway. You're not a resident. Where are you resident? You have no residency.
Residence for longer than 3 months. Here.
Okay.
So that's the situation
And-
that you were thinking, that you were saying that is the ideal, that you don't end up paying tax.
Yes, but the problem is, I think like you were saying, banking gets difficult if you don't have residency somewhere. You're going to have a hard time opening bank accounts if you can't prove residency somewhere. So if you go to a bank account, pretty much anywhere, and you say, look at it, pretend like you're the person on the other side of the desk from you at the bank. And you go to the bank and you say, I want to open a bank account. And they say, okay, great. Can I see your passport? All right, here you go, Costa Rica. Where do you live? I don't live anywhere.
You don't tell them, no? An address, you're not resident there, but just, I don't know, my mom's or someone's just for the post.
The moment you say, I don't live anywhere, it goes,
No, but
all the red
I
flags
would
pop
keep an
up.
address. It's just, I'm not resident.
So are you suggesting a gray area solution?
Yes, back for They usually don't ask me where are you resident, like where do you live?
Where do you live? I mean,
is it equal?
In banker terms, those are the same words. Where do you live?
Okay.
Where is your residence?
Can you name the other pros and cons of lack of the normal residency and lack of the tax residency?
No tax residence mean. Physical.
Okay.
Both.
You really need physical residency somewhere. Technically, you can live without physical residency also.
Yeah, right. So what
It
are
is
the
possible. Cons are you're going to have a very difficult time banking. You're going to have a very difficult time opening any investment accounts. You're going to have basically anything financial related is going to be a pain in the ass. It's going to be very complicated.
Exactly, what
Most
they
of
already
them
have
survive.
everything in place.
Yeah, and what happens when that bank comes to you and wants to update their records because under the
Every year.
CRS, under the CRS directive, the Common Reporting Standard Directive, every couple of years they have to update your
Never happened to me in
KYC.
my life. I have like 5 bank accounts in different countries.
It will.
Never happened.
It will. They're just now starting over the past couple of years. Who here has gotten a notice from their bank that says, hey, please update your residency records? Multiple
20% of
times.
people here.
Yeah, Revolut asked for it, Wise asked for it. Any bank in Europe is going to ask for it at some
But is
point.
it a problem if you, for example, with different banks have different addresses?
No. No. That's not a
like-
problem.
I have some.
Yeah, I guess my question is, of course, I know it's not a problem now because that's my case. The question is, will it become a problem once the CRS really gets going and the
I mean,
CEO,
CRS
same name,
directive was-
same number, and 3 different addresses?
CRS directives have been going for 7 years.
I know, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
I don't see any issue with it. It depends. Let's say you had an account when you were a resident in Germany and you opened an account at I don't know, Deutsche Bank or
Yeah.
something, and you used your home address when you lived in Germany, and now you've moved, and you're like, yeah,
updated it.
I still live there, right? They're going to continue in their compliance, in Deutsche Bank's compliance. They're going to treat you as a German resident, which means when they report their information to OECD, their CRS report
Right.
to OECD, you're going to be listed in their compliance, in their reporting as a German resident. Now, if you had a bank account at, say, N26, and you use, what, you have Paraguayan residency, don't you?
No.
Where do you have residency?
Singapore.
Singapore. So if you open an account, look, I don't even know if you can within 26, but let's pretend like you can. If you had an account within 26 and you told them you were a Singapore resident, and now N26 has their compliance reporting, CRS reporting, they're going to have you in their records as a Singapore resident, right? Singapore is also, I assume you have bank accounts in Singapore. So Singapore is also a CRS country, so they're also reporting your address, right? Now, to answer your question, what happens if Deutsche Bank and OCBC and N26 and they're all 3 reporting different addresses? I have a very simple answer for you. Who the fuck knows? We have no idea what they're going to do.
Right, exactly.
I don't think they have an idea what they're going to do. I don't think they have a clue what they're going to do either. But to answer your question, you really need physical residency somewhere, or else things are just going to be a hassle. You will absolutely at some point have a bank account ask you, please update your residency information, your tax ID number, or your ad. Depends on the bank; they have different questions to ask. But it's your bank, your address, your tax ID information, your copy of your residence permit, utility bill, or something like that to prove residency. And the moment you can't provide that, they'll close your account. And that's why you can't function without some form of residency. But so that's the negative for no physical residency. The negative for no tax residency is basically getting loans. Actually, is really the main, in my opinion, the main difficulty. But it depends on the country where you're from. Anybody from Norway? Yeah. So Norwegians, I can't remember. It's 4 year. 4 year, 3 years. Yeah. So for 3 years, he has to prove he's tax resident somewhere else, or Norway doesn't let him go. Yeah, Finland also is like that. Sweden also. All you Scandinavian guys. So yeah, for 3 years he has to prove so he can move to I don't know. You could do one possible option, maybe Dubai, because you can move to Dubai and get. Oh wait, no, they consider that a tax haven. Finland considers that a tax haven, right? Or Norway considers that a tax haven. You could move, but you would have to choose an interim option that's better than Finland before you can fully escape. Like maybe the UK, for example. Like maybe you move to the UK for 3 years because the UK is really easy to exit. Move to the UK for 3 years and then file in the UK, which is actually a lower tax rate than Norway anyway, and then give up tax residency in the UK. You file in the UK, you file P85, I think it's the form. I think it's called a P85. It's like one-page form you file to tell them. I think what you're doing is you fill in this form and you send them a picture of you doing that. And you come back. I think that's how it works.
You know how easy it is to exit Estonian tax?
Yeah, you deregister.
Does it take 3 years also?
No, you just deregister and you leave. It's similar to Germany. You go to your local. Are you a Estonian resident?
Yes.
Remember when you moved to Estonia, you had to go to some office, or I think you do it online now in Estonia, but you register. I live at
Yeah, I have an address there.
Uli 3 or whatever that Estonian word is for there. That's like half the words, right? Uli something. So you put that in, you say, and you move, you change your address, you no longer live there, you move to Mexico or something. And that's it. That's all you gotta do.
Back to that banking question. So when the bank asks you, after you've already moved away from the country, couldn't you just say that you still live in the place? Like, are they going to follow up with that? Or other option, could you just input a non-CRS country as a residence? Like, are they going to actually check that?
Depends on the bank.
Okay.
For example, most European Union banks, you have to be an EU resident to have a bank account in the EU. So if you were, let's say you had a bank account at BBVA in Spain,
Yeah.
and then you move to Indonesia, for example,
Yeah.
and then you tell BBVA, you move to Indonesia, they're probably just going to close your account.
So
Because you're no longer an EU or Spanish resident.
So I could just tell them I still live where I used to.
You can. So like I was explaining to Florian, if you tell them, they're still in their compliance to their reporting.
But they're probably gonna ask for KYC anyway.
Yeah.
So they want to see some bill, some address, some.
They're going to want some proof of address. It depends. It depends on the bank. Sometimes they just you log into your online banking, you get a pop-up screen, it's done, right? They're like, do you still live at this address? Yes.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it, right?
exactly.
And then some of them, depends on the bank and what, maybe they've escalated your account for whatever reason. Then sometimes they ask, like you hit yes, and then it takes you to the next screen and they say, please upload a utility bill with your address on it to prove you live there, or something along those lines. So you would need to either have that document or be handy at PDF editor. That's on the shadier side of the gray, full disclosure.
You don't recommend it, right?
That's past that gray.
Yeah, that's
probably
a darker shade of gray, but
I mean, you don't like if we move away, you don't recommend it because like they will keep like report
The
that?
good rule is before you give it away, open as much as many bank accounts as you can, so that you have, if they ask you
Options.
afterwards, then when one kicks you out, you still have the others.
Yeah, but as I
And
understood,
when
I
you go
shouldn't
somewhere
want
else,
this
open
option.
something there. I don't see any reason
Because
why
you
you
said
shouldn't keep it.
You said that they would keep reporting me as resident in the country.
From their CRS report.
They will, but
They will, but if you've done the correct thing in your country to exit the tax system, it's a little bit of that's a gray area thing there too, but you've done the thing on the government side. Like if you're German, you exited, told the municipality you left, or whatever country, you've done the right thing to exit the country, but you still have a Deutsche Bank account and they're still like, do you still live at this address? Yeah.
But you said it's
I probably wouldn't bother unless the bank comes back to you and says, no, we don't believe you. We think you're a big fat liar. We need you to prove to us you live at that address. And then that might be the moment you're like,
the longer it takes, the better, the bigger is the chance that you fail. Even with my 8 bank account, two are more or less gone. 6 survive, but it's just a question of time.
But you said
It
it's
is,
easy to exit Germany. I read all over internet it's so difficult.
No, it's one click.
Only if you have a company.
If you have
I
nothing,
mean, it's but do they accept
if you
it
have
so
something,
easy that apparently they
it's-
might ask your friends check your
Depends on your situation. If you're just a private person, you don't have any business in Germany, just go and
What if you have properties in Germany? Is it easy to exit it?
it's easy to exit if you have property, but it won't be, you can't claim that as your home anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And if you have income, let's say you have apartments on Airbnb, you will still need to file and pay tax
Just these.
on
Yeah,
that
yeah,
income,
yeah, yeah.
but not your
Exactly.
other income. But it's the same like me. If I go buy property in Hamburg, I'm still gonna have to pay tax on my income I earn from those properties. It's no different, me or you, in that scenario. Right? Back here, I think.
So as a Paraguay permanent resident, how useful is it to set up the Paraguay tax number? Paraguay tax number, how useful is it to set it up? And is it useful to set up some sort of Paraguay business, or is the tax number the only thing that is useful there?
What's your nationality? I forgot.
2 European ones. EU, EU and non-EU in Europe too.
What's the non-EU?
Switzerland?
Oh, Switzerland.
Swiss and UK.
Swiss and UK.
Yeah.
Swiss can't leave, I think. Swiss are forever Swiss, I think. Aren't they?
Huh?
Swiss are forever Swiss, and they don't have any reason to go anyway.
you don't need to prove that they're
But they-
living somewhere else.
I don't see any. So you have residency in Paraguay, and you're not spending too much time in the UK or Switzerland, right? It's not a big issue for you. You could get the tax number, but it's not a huge advantage. I wouldn't register a Paraguayan company. I don't see the point.
But for example, like both of us have Dubai.
Speak up. I can't hear you.
Sorry, we're based in Dubai right now, but let's just say we didn't want to be based there for much longer. For example, I don't like the banking system in Dubai.
Do you have a Dubai residency?
Yeah, and company.
So you have Dubai residency and Paraguay. Okay.
And
But you're leaving Dubai. You're like,
it's not.
enough of this nonsense.
No, it's not confederate. It's just I don't like the banking there. Like I find it very inconvenient.
Yeah.
Especially with clients. I had a client who wired us. It was like 20K, right? It wasn't anything crazy. His bank account in Australia got locked. My company account got frozen, and my personal bank account got frozen from that. So then the client was really pissed. We lost a bunch of business. He was meant to pay us considerably more than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, basically the question is like, good for
good for
potentially having
residency.
like an address, because obviously we travel a lot, and if for example we have a permanent address in Dubai,
You
is
do
it-
not have a permanent address?
I do.
Oh, you do?
If we didn't, right?
Oh,
like,
if you don't.
More a question about potential planning, because I don't want to be in a position where I'm reactive. I'd rather be like more about the whole thing, right?
So it sounds like these are multiple questions. So
Just like giving up Dubai.
from a banking and a business standpoint, you're never gonna hear me recommend Dubai. Like, I would never recommend it, mainly because the banking issue is complicated and you can have problems banking, especially doing business with other countries, unless you're in like Asia or the Middle East. So generally, I don't recommend Dubai. The only time I recommend Dubai as a company is if you want to get residency and you go, basically you hire yourself from the company for the purpose of getting residency. And that would be a good function for having a Dubai company. But for practical use, Dubai companies are usually not terribly useful.
Yeah.
Because banking is messy, and a lot of countries don't like interacting with Dubai banks.
But you have Switzerland, that's a paradise for banking and paradise for taxes, so why bother? There's more or less nothing better than Switzerland.
I don't know.
Being non-tax
That's not
revenue
true.
is better than Switzerland, because then you don't pay at all.
Yeah, but when you optimize your Swiss taxes, you'll probably end up with 5 to 10%, and that's money well spent. Because you have a functioning bank system, so that's great.
Cyprus, it's okay, but the banking is, again, not very good in Cyprus. And Cyprus is like the black sheep of the European Union. Residency is good if you want to do like the non-dom residency in Cyprus. Generally speaking, for your company registration, I'll go into more depth on this. So I don't want to tie this talk up with company structure because I'm doing that on Thursday. But generally speaking, for the front end of your business, you're better off in big countries. You're just going to have less hassle. Banking, payment processing, all that stuff. The US, UK, some EU, depending on the tax structure in that jurisdiction, you're better off like that. But from a personal standpoint, Cyprus could be a good option because you're Costa Rican, you said, right? And that would give you residency in the European Union if you wanted to go that route. If you go the route where you register a company to get residency in Cyprus, you could do that, but it's still not really ideal for the company operation. You might do it like all the people that got residency in Panama over the years, but just by registering a company and hiring themselves. Panama's a trash jurisdiction to use for operational business, but people do it just to get residency. They don't use the company structure itself. You want a better company structure because otherwise people are like, oh, I should totally register a company in Belize that has zero tax. Give me a break. You're never going to get a Stripe account. You're never going to get PayPal. You're never going to get a decent merchant account. You're never going to, I wouldn't put my lunch money in a Belize bank. Like, why would you do that for your operational side of your business? It's a hassle. So generally for your operational side of your business, stay in a big country and optimize the best you can there. And then you have to think about like of your business, what you're doing.
So let's say you have many companies in different jurisdictions, like.
Sounds like you guys have a mess.
Yeah, you need a.
Well, that's just some other places. But if you were to also have like a Paraguay address for personal like affairs, right? Is there any benefit to doing that, or like why else would somebody go to Paraguay?
That's physical residency.
So that's
CRS reporting.
So that's what you submit when you open a bank account.
Yep.
And can you use, like, let's say I wanted to open a US or UK or Swiss bank with a Paraguay phone
In the US, it wouldn't matter. Anybody can walk into a bank in the US and open an account.
Really?
Yeah.
With a non-US residence.
Yeah.
And no social security?
Now, to be fair, I've had plenty of clients that have walked into US banks and the teller at the bank said, oh, you have to live here, okay? Has anybody had that happen to them?
Yeah.
So, that can happen, and I'll tell you why. Because they are so poorly trained at the low level in the bank, they don't know any better, and you are an anomaly for them.
Yeah.
You're a weirdo that just walked in the door that they don't have any idea what to do with you when you walk in the bank. Florian walk in Bank of America or whatever.
Yeah,
Florian walks
that.
into Bank of America and they say, he says, I want to open a bank account. And they say, all right, where do you live? Everywhere. You know, I live on a boat sometimes, right? Like, and what's your passport? Okay, here's my passport. Why do you need a U.S. bank account? I don't know, I want one. Like, it throws up red flags. They don't know what to do. So you have to go in prepared for the story. And if you walk into the bank, also, I tell all my clients, if you go to one of the big banks, like a Wells Fargo or Bank of America or Chase, Citi, any of those, find the regional office in the town where you're going, because then if the low-level person gets confused, you can always escalate that up to the regional vice president because he works in that office. I had one client a few years ago, British guy. We opened a couple of LLCs for him, and he walked into 3 banks in California, and they all told him no. And he called me livid. He literally cussed me out for 3 minutes on the phone. I'm like this. Okay, get it out. And then I'm like, okay, jackass, Now do what I told you to do the first time and go to the regional office of all three of those banks tomorrow. And he called me back 2 days later and he goes, hey, sorry about that call. My bad, you're right. I got all three of those accounts open. Okay?
So I
I
have a
thought the
question.
same thing. So like.
But you can do it. You can't be the weak one in that conversation. You gotta be like the strong one that says, when they say, no, I'm sorry, ma'am, you cannot. And you say, that's not true. Yes, you can.
So when they ask for the social security number, like.
You don't need a social security number to open a personal bank account in the U.S. And for a business account, if you open a business account, all you need is an EIN for your company.
Yeah, the business one's fine. Okay, that's really helpful.
Can I ask
Now,
something?
if you want to open credit cards, that's a different question, but it is related. If you want to open a credit card and you're a non-U.S. person, you will need either a social security number, which if you're non-U.S., you probably don't have one unless you went to university in the U.S., or you will need an ITIN, which stands for Individual Taxpayer ID Number. You will need that to open credit cards, but you don't need it just for a normal. Like,
I heard that there are some credit cards that you put deposit up front and then they.
you still need an ITIN though. You still need an ITIN because it's a credit card and it's reporting to the 3 credit reporting agencies, and they need a tax ID number for reporting. And so also, just so you know, if any of you want an ITIN, you have to renew it every 2 years. It is every 2 years you have to renew it. ITIN, Individual Taxpayer ID Number for the U.S. There's some benefits to it though. Like if you want to, the credit cards are definitely the best credit cards in the world for all the bonus points and miles and stuff. Especially if you get Chase cards, because like all the Chase cards, you can collect ultimate reward points across all of your cards and you can spend it all in one place. But it'll take you some time to build it. You have to get an ITIN, and it'll take you some time to build up credit. But once you're in, once you're locked
You need
in,
to be
2
in
years
tax.
approximately until you get to the level where you can apply for the right now.
yeah, you'll have to, like you said, you'll have to start maybe with one of these secured credit cards. Like you deposit $1,000, they give you $1,000 credit limit, and then next month you're like, can you up my credit limit? Up my credit limit, and then after 6 months, you apply for one of their unsecured low-level credit cards like Chase Freedom or something like that, and after 2 years you can get Chase Sapphire Reserve or something like that. I literally don't buy plane tickets anymore because I get so many points, especially with my Google Ad spend. I just don't even buy credit. I don't even buy plane tickets
What is the
anymore.
item? So you need to be a tax resident in the US to get this.
Not a tax resident, you need a tax ID number.
Tax ID doesn't mean tax resident.
It does not.
So it's just a process. It's not just getting a number.
It's just paperwork. It's just paperwork.
I have a question that is related to the.
But it has to be done every couple of years. You got to remember, and it can cost about $400
And
each
you have to
time.
live in the US.
No. I know your arm is about to fall off, so
For 1
relax.
hour already.
Put it down, relax it.
So I left Germany, I deregistered, and I think I did everything properly. And now I just keep traveling, and I always look up, well, when do I need a visa? And I leave before this, so I'm very flexible, and I don't pass the maximum amount of days to become a resident or to get a visa. I don't pay any taxes. Can I get arrested someday? And my income is coming from Holland, so it's not coming from Germany. I have German bank accounts. But
Yeah. Okay. What's your question?
can I keep doing it?
She's gonna get arrested was the question.
Where's your company?
Wait, so you're neither a resident anywhere nor
Can you keep doing it? Sure, you can until you can't.
For example?
Like your banks, they're just going to start shutting your accounts down.
No. I had to accept that it was my address.
Right. Yeah, and that's good. Eventually, that will catch up to you. That'll create problems.
But someday. Until then, maybe I live somewhere.
Can you keep doing it? Like I said, yes, until you can't.
What's the grade?
And there will absolutely be a time when you cannot. And I don't know how much money you make, but if you're earning lower amount of money, you can probably slide by for a longer period of time because you're not on anybody's radar. If you make $1 million a year, you probably have about 5 more minutes you can do this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You can't
So I need
keep-
more bank accounts, you're saying this? And
No, you need residency. You need physical residency somewhere. 100%.
Like Cyprus, you said would be good. Or
Pick one. Mexico, Paraguay, Costa Rica, Cyprus.
Thank you.
Oh, I just want to say one thing real quick for the Americans. This is an option for the Americans. It's an interesting option. It really only works for Americans. But Spain is really good for Americans to go get residency because they have Beckham's Law. Everyone knows who David Beckham is, right? So they have Beckham's Law. Beckham's Law says if you are a tax resident somewhere else, you don't have to file or pay tax or if you're a tax resident somewhere else that has a tax treaty with Spain, you don't have to file or pay tax in Spain because they just consider you get it done back in your home country under Beckham's Law, okay? Now, the reason that really only works with Americans is because Americans are always a tax resident of the U.S. forever and ever, whereas if you're German and you leave Germany, you're no longer a tax resident. So then you have to register as a tax resident in Spain if you move to Spain in that case. But if you're an American, you can get residency in Spain, and if you were ever asked by the tax office, you would just say, no, I'm a tax resident in the U.S. Here's a copy of my last year's tax return, and that's it.
Yeah, but you still pay taxes, 24% taxes for the next 5 years. That applies for Spanish citizens that are no longer living in Spain. But you still pay a 24% tax, which is great. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a cool option for Americans. Basically, if anybody, everyone else, Spain is a complicated and high tax country, but Americans it can be a good option. I know you had your hand up.
Very quick. So basically, I had wives and then he's asking me about tax.
Yo no sabía, yo no sabía, pero bueno, me lo creo, o sea, Beckham no, tú dices, tú quiero por Beckham no es para mí.
You don't become a tax resident by having a bank account. That doesn't make you tax resident.
They are asking about tax residency.
Yeah, but in Revolut.
In Revolut.
Why do they ask this if we don't need necessarily have tax residency?
So this is, now we're back into the gray zone.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you go through the process for Revolut, or any of the banks that ask this, they ask for your tax residency. They use the word tax residency. What they're asking is your physical residency. So the only way to prove you're a tax resident in a country is either proof of a filed tax return and tax payment, or a tax certificate from that country. Not all countries issue a tax certificate, but most do. So you either prove tax residency in a country. You either need to have a certificate or a tax return saying you paid tax there. None of the banks, or at least yet, are asking for this. Now, it wouldn't surprise me in the next few years that they implement this in the CRS directive and now the banks start asking for that as well. But as it is today, they do not ask. They say the words, what's your tax residency, but the only thing you're declaring is your physical residency.
And which country do you recommend for tax residency?
Well, it depends on your personal situation. If you are nomadic, I recommend none. But it depends on your situation, right? If you say, I really want to get a mortgage and buy a house and settle down in Portugal, you're going to need to have tax residency for a while, at least a couple of years, because when you go to the bank, they're going to want to see proof of your tax return for a couple of years, proof of income. Now, there are private lenders you can go to where you pay a higher interest rate, you pay a premium. So it depends on your personal situation. But if you're like, nope, I'm nomadic, I don't want to be anything, then no tax resident is ideal. But if you really want something, I can't tell you. Like, even if I told you, like, it wouldn't mean anything to you. I can tell you, Zimbabwe is the best country in the world to have tax residency, and you're like, that's stupid. I don't want to live there. You have to think about like how you want to live your life. You can't make every decision based on a tax decision, right?
What are the countries in the CRS? So the CRS is a system.
I couldn't name them. There's over 100. If you want a good list, just go to Wikipedia and type in CRS countries.
Those are the ones that share information across.
Yes, it's a shared database. They can query a shared database. So it's not like you go open a bank account in Singapore and the Costa Rican tax office goes, aha, got it. It's not like that. They have to query the database to find your financial accounts related that are open in other CRS registered countries or CRS signatory countries. Does everyone know what the CRS is? So the CRS is the Common Reporting Standard It is a directive published by the OECD in 2016. The OECD is the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. It's an intergovernmental agency that kind of oversees financial and tax matters between countries. And they publish directives, not laws, but directives. They publish the directive, and then countries that are OECD members can choose to participate in that directive. So far, there's over 100 countries that have chosen to participate in the CRS directive. I don't know exactly, 105, 110, but I mean.
Are we to avoid them, or what was that?
No, I'm just explaining what it is. To avoid them or not, I mean, it depends on your personal situation. If you want to avoid them, then the U.S. is the best country for you to open your bank accounts in. The U.S. is not a CRS country, never will be, and they don't report to anybody unless there's some crime involved.